In this video, I will share with you exactly what I did to start my own podcast show. I will dive into great detail and share with you a step-by-step process of what it actually takes to start your own podcast show. If you want to start your own show, but you're a little bit overwhelmed by the technicalities of starting a podcast, then this video is for you. Hi guys, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new to my channel, then welcome. If you're a content creator, an entrepreneur, or a working mama, then you've come to the right place. I have a confession to make. I've been meaning to start a podcast for 2 years. In reality, I only got to starting it in August 2020, just because I was slightly intimidated by how much you need to do to get that first episode out into the world. And to be completely honest with you, it's only a little bit intimidating when you are setting up your show and getting that first episode out. And as soon as that is done and dusted, the process becomes as smooth as butter. Before starting my podcast, I did a great deal of research. I didn't only research how to start a podcast, but what would it do for my business if I decided to use it as a tool. Because as a working mom, I need to spend my time wisely. And here's what I found. Podcasting is one of the best ways to connect with your audience and build trust. First of all, your ideal listeners, women in your community, don't have to put their life on pause to consume your content. They can be driving, doing the dishes, folding laundry, working out, putting their baby to sleep, while listening to your voice in their earbuds. I've been an avid podcast listener for many years, and the creators I choose to listen to and consume their content, I feel like they're my friends now, even though they have no idea who I am. That connection doesn't get much more personal than that. Another perk of podcasting is the fact that you don't have to change out of your sweatpants to create content, and it doesn't get much better than this. I'm a working from home mom who gets dressed up once a week to create some video content, so you can definitely see why someone like me would want to create podcasts. I've been reflecting on why it took me so long to start my podcast, and the thing is, right now I'm a huge believer in breaking down goals into smaller actionable steps. There's a great saying that you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. Well, the same logic applies to podcasting. I've made a huge mistake by simply putting down start a podcast on my to-do list. Guess what? Every time I'd look at that task on my list, I'd get shivers down my spine. And what would I do? Nothing. And that start a podcast task has been moving from week to week, from one to-do list to another, for 2 years. I was simply lacking clarity, and in order for us to gain clarity in whatever we want to achieve, we need to reverse engineer that big goal, and in this case, it's start a podcast. And that is exactly what I did. And believe it or not, after I did that, I had a podcast show within a week. If you're new to my channel, my name is Veronika. I'm a co-founder of a modest activewear and swimwear brand for Generation Apparel. I'm a content creator and photographer. I share my business journey along with its ups and downs, practical advice, and valuable lessons to inspire women like me to start working for their dreams, craft the life that they deserve, pursue their passion, and create a positive impact in this world. I'm going to share with you my version of an action plan to starting your own podcast. I want you to see that it's not as scary as it seems. If you're ready to learn, and hopefully after watching this video, you'll be ready to start your own podcast show, make sure you like this video. Let's do it. Step number 1 Decide on the topic of your show. More often than not, when you actually make a decision to start your own show, you've been creating content for a while on other social media platforms. At least that was the case for me. By the time I got around to starting a podcast, I already knew what I wanted to share and talk about on my show. I also knew exactly how I wanted to name my show, and in my case, I went and named it after myself just to keep everything on brand and in line with what I do on other social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So that part was pretty straightforward for me. If you are not going to name the show after yourself, then you need to come up with a punchy, intriguing name for your show that will tell the audience what they're going to get if they decide to tune in into an episode. Start actively thinking about it. Talk to people in your life and your community online. Whenever you get an idea, make sure you write it down. As soon as you have a decent list going, about 20 to 50 options, make sure you narrow it down to top 3 candidates. Then go to your community online and ask for help to narrow it down to your number 1 winner. And I'd strongly encourage to focus on podcast listeners, as they would know exactly what would work for them if they were browsing the library of podcasts looking for a new show to tune into. Tip number 2, you need gear. Podcast is an audio piece of content. In order to record audio, you need a microphone. There are many different microphones, types, and brands that you can choose from. Boom microphones, little lapel microphones, USB microphones that plug in into your phone or your laptop. You have to look at all of the options under the sun and choose the one that works for you logistically and financially. When I decided to start a podcast, I already had a microphone, and it's a Rode podcasting USB microphone that plugs in directly into my laptop. It records great quality sound. I've been using it and I've been loving it for a year now. At the very beginning, you honestly don't need a very fancy setup. All you need is a mic. So if you've been telling yourself that you can't start a podcast because you don't have a recording studio, well, that's just nonsense, because you can. All you need is a microphone. I record in my office/stockroom, exactly where I am now. I put the blankets on the floor to make the room not echoey. I press record and I'm ready to go. We're on to step number 3, record your first episode. Now that you have your name, the topics that you want to talk about, your microphone, it's time to get to action and record that very first episode. It could be a solo interview, it could be a repurposed audio from, let's say, one of your Instagram lives, or it could be an interview. This episode was my very first podcast episode, and it was a repurposed audio from one of my solo Instagram lives that I edited to make it nice and smooth and flowy. Then I also recorded an introduction and a conclusion for that episode. I packaged it all in one audio file, and there I had it, my very first podcast episode. But I have a very cool tip for you. So in order to actually get your wheels turning and fast track your way to releasing your first episode, I'd recommend going with an interview. Hear me out. The stakes are simply higher when another person is involved. You have promised to your guest that you would release that episode hopefully by a specific date. So your guest has expectations of you delivering on your promises. And that can be the accountability you need to actually start your podcast. What do you think about that? And we're on to step number 4. Put together an intro for your show. So welcome to the Veronika Edali show. If you're an ambitious content creator, an entrepreneur, or a working mama, this is a show intro. Do you need one for your show? If yes, then you need to write, record, and edit it. Oh, and choose your show music. That is very exciting. I personally got the music for my opener from Envato Elements. It's an online media subscription that I've invested in last year. I'm going to leave the link in the description. You can check it out. And I also talk more about it in this video. And I'm going to leave the link for the video in the description below. Add it to your watch list and check it out. My number one advice would be do not wing your introduction. Take the time to think about it and write it word for word. It's very important to be very clear with people and tell them about who you are, what you do, and what they're going to get from listening to your show. It's very important to get it right because first impressions do matter. We are already on to step number 5. Edit your first episode. Now that you have all of the elements needed for your first episode, it's time to actually put it together. I personally use GarageBand to record and edit all of my audio files on my MacBook Pro. I started my very first episode with my official show intro just because it was my debut episode. For every single episode after that, I included a little preview right before my show introduction. The introduction to the episode followed the official show introduction. Then I included a Fit Generation Apparel ad just because I work very hard and invest a lot of my time and energy into producing great free content. And I felt that I had absolutely every right to include an ad for my business so that women who are looking for great quality functional activewear, then that's how they would find out about my company. Right after the advertisement, I put the core part of the episode, the educational part, the part with all of the practical advice that you need. Then I simply wrapped up the episode with a conclusion. And that is a very common episode structure that flows nicely and that a lot of podcast creators use. Step number 6, design your show artwork. And when I say show artwork, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a square image that appears on every single audio file, every single episode of yours, on whatever platform you have your episodes. You definitely need one. Simply go to Canva, type in this ratio, and start creating. You can use your photo, you can use stock imagery, you can also use a little caricature of yourself. There is no right or wrong. I would recommend designing 2 or 3 different options and then going to your community and asking for their opinion. And especially focus on podcast listeners. They would know what would work from their own experience, so you can definitely trust their judgment. Step number 7, you need show notes. If you're a podcast listener, then you've probably heard podcast creators mention show notes in their episode. It's an online space where you leave the summary of the episode and all of the related links and resources related to the episode. You can either include it in the description box when you're publishing your podcast episode, or you can actually turn it into a proper blog post, which I strongly recommend. 2 birds, 1 stone. You have an audio file and you have a blog post, which is SEO searchable and will help you rank on Google if you, of course, optimize for your keywords. And the great thing about it is that your audio and your written blog post are both evergreen. They're not going to disappear in 24 hours like your average Instagram story. If you're already blogging, you have your own website, a creative hub, then simply start creating a blog post to go with your audio file. If you don't yet, that's fine. Start thinking about starting your own website and start blogging, but you can definitely utilize the description space that is available for you whenever you post your episodes. Tip number 8, I believe. Now it's time to get your episode out into the world. And in order for you to do that, you need a podcast hosting provider. There are many different hosting providers that you can choose from. I personally use Libsyn. It's a paid service, but it's definitely worth it. I pay about $10 every single month for my podcast hosting provider, and I get about 250 megabytes of storage space, which is more than enough if you are planning to release an episode every single week. I'm not going to get into a step-by-step guide how to take your audio file, optimize it, set up your show within the hosting provider. But what I'm going to do instead is link an amazing video by Flynn. I followed his video to a T when I was setting up my show. I found it very helpful and it worked for me really well. You can find the link in the description below. The beauty of publishing your episodes through a podcast hosting provider is the fact that you need to do it once, and then your hosting provider will take that episode and distribute it to platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and Stitcher. Once again, simply go to Flynn's video that I'll link in the description below to learn exactly how to set up your show and connect it to iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. Now that your episode is out there to be appreciated, it's time for you to market it. For your first episode and the launch of your show, make it a big deal. Start talking about it before you even launch the show, get the people excited, and make that launch event as big as it can be, because your work and effort needs to be celebrated. But before you do that, please make sure that you double check and triple check, listen to that audio file, make sure it's linked correctly to all of the platforms, and once you've done the final checks, then it's time to spread the word. I'd recommend making an Instagram, a TikTok, a Facebook post, hop on your Instagram stories, tell people what you've been up to, put the link to your episode in your Instagram profile. You can even create a little snippet with your artwork and a little preview of the episode. I use Mojo to put together all of my graphics. So if you want to learn more about Mojo and why I love it, check out this video. The link is in the description. Of course, spread the good news to your mailing list. The hardest part of starting a podcast is setting up the show itself. When you've done that once, all you need to do is record, edit, package, publish, rinse, and repeat over and over again, consistently, to keep up that momentum. As you can see, it's not as hard as it seems. If you found this video helpful, then all I ask of you is to like it, comment, share it with a friend, let me know. Help me spread the word to inspire more content creators and entrepreneurs to pursue their passion, take action, and start working for their dreams. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel right here, and if you want to learn more about content creation, check out this playlist over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.